operators, bodyguards for them, and the constant rotation. So in terms of monitoring individuals, you've got to have a pretty good idea that they're going to or are planning something pretty bad before human resources are put to that kind of focused degree. And of course, the terrorist organizations know this, and they know that what they wish to do is disrupt normal life. That is the reason why the British government has been so quick to get back to something resembling normal life, even around Westminster, because failure to do so will deliver strategic effect to what, though brutal and bloody, is a tactical operation. And that extends all the way to the attack on the Twin Towers in New York. That was, whilst it killed over 3,000 people, was a tactical operation, but what it delivered was strategic effect. It caused a war with Afghanistan. It went on to become part of the justification for the war in Iraq, and it delivered to Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda then, a clash of civilizations. And it's exactly those frictions that terrorist attacks, particularly those from Islamic fundamentalist groups, are trying to achieve, whether it's achieve friction within British society, friction here in Iraq, where I am, between Shia and Sunni, or Kurd and Arab, and friction around the world between different religious beliefs. Wherever it is, wherever there is peace, that is anathema to these groups, not least because, of course, they hail from places like Iraq and Syria, which, thanks to them, are in a quite literally bloody mess.
Sam, it's entirely possible in coming days or weeks that you and others will witness the fall of Islamic State, so-called, in Mosul. They'll remain in Raqqa for how much longer we know not. But even if they were dislodged and removed from Raqqa, it's very difficult, isn't it? And we've talked about this before, to kill an idea. And there will still be, even if Islamic State were removed from Raqqa, their messages will still reverberate around the internet and printed tracts and perhaps in the occasional mosque pulpit as well. Killing that idea is impossible, and there will always be young men willing to commit themselves to it.
There are always young men available to do very stupid things for very limited level of justifiable cause or even understanding of that cause. One of the striking things that Sky News discovered when we found a cache of, discovered a large number of documents showing how foreign fighters were flocking to the Islamic Caliphate's flag, was that their understanding of Islam was extremely rudimentary. What they had been galvanized by really was an opportunity, and a lot of young men in their dark moments may understand this, the opportunity to get out there, prove themselves, do some killing, and establish themselves as having more authority than they probably deserve. That was certainly the pattern that we've seen across the territories controlled by the so-called caliphate. Those territories have now shrunk by about 80% here in Iraq and about 50 to 60% in the Syrian territory. They're surrounded in small areas of Mosul. Their capital now, Raqqa, is surrounded and under great pressure. And they will be looking perhaps to try to inspire more of these attacks overseas by way of hitting back. But that has always been part of their modus operandi, has been since the days of Al-Qaeda's pamphlets. One was entitled How to Build a Bomb in Your Mum's Kitchen. There has always been an encouragement from these jihadi groups for the self-starter, the unconnected cell, the individual, such as the sort we saw yesterday. Perhaps, we don't know if he was part of a wider plot, but the indications are that he probably wasn't, to use rudimentary weapons, a car and a kitchen knife, to try to sow terror in order to achieve that strategic effect from very rudimentary tactical practice.
Sam, thanks very much indeed, Sam Kiley in Erbil. Dr. Osama Hassan is with the Quilliam Foundation. Doctor, thanks very much indeed for joining us today. Sam Kiley, our Foreign Affairs editor, was making the point then that oftentimes these attacks are carried out by young, angry men who are theologically ignorant.
Yes, absolutely. But they're still very dangerous because they have the backing of Al-Qaeda or ISIS scholars, like so-called scholars, like Abu Qatada, Abu Hamza, and these people who cause us so much problem here. So the problem is they have a very simplistic binary worldview. It's Muslims versus non-Muslims, and everybody who's not with them, with IS, is their enemy and is a legitimate target, whether you're Muslim or not. And one of the victims yesterday, we understand, was a Muslim woman by the name of Aisha. So it's really sad. That is the core idea. I heard you talking about getting rid of an idea, defeating an idea. The idea that Muslim and non-Muslim cannot live together, that we can't be part of a nation state together as citizens. That idea is what ISIS promote, a division between people based on faith. And we have to defeat that idea. It's the only way forward to live together in this world.
Quilliam, you've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and we know the government's doing the same and spending a lot of money on things like the Prevent programme, which aim to do exactly this, don't they? With mixed results.
Well, actually, overall, the results have been very positive. So, for example, the fact that most of the terror plots have been foiled, and we know a number of people, terrorists in prison or would-be terrorists outside, who have been de-radicalised through the Prevent programme nowadays. Now, of course, Prevent
Some people go to prison and get radicalised, don't they?
Yes, that's the downside, but again, a poor strategy. But Prevent had its flaws, of course, and innocent children have been suspected, for example. Those flaws have to be dealt with, but we mustn't have the irresponsible and dangerous position of some politicians and student unions and things to say that this is anti-Muslim and we must somehow scrap Prevent. If we were to scrap Prevent, you'd see far more attacks like this, God forbid. So I think we have to be very measured and mature about this. This is not some empty threat. As we can see, it's murder on the streets of London.
In a sense, things would be easier to reconcile ourselves to on one level if it turned out that the assailant yesterday had maybe come over recently as an illegal migrant or whatever. But this, we're told from Theresa May herself, without giving his name, they're aware of it, they're not sharing it at the moment, but this was a British-born individual, which does make us have to grapple with some of these problems. This is somebody who comes from this country.
Yes, it's shocking, but it's not surprising. I mean, don't forget the 7/7 bombers over a decade ago, not far from here. They're all British-born and bred, and we've seen hundreds join IS abroad and become terrorists. So that should no longer shock us, actually, because we have to realise that in some ghettoised, marginalised communities or self-created extremist ghettos, British people, whole families, in fact, men, women, children, grandparents, are actually being radicalised into this ideology, and we have to fight that.
There was an interesting study, I think a couple of months ago, I'm sure you'll be familiar with it rather more so than me, that said this idea, that this rather facile idea sometimes that we cleave to, that the internet indoctrinates lone wolves, and that's the process. Said, OK, that's part of the process in maybe 10-20% of cases. But usually these are not young men completely in isolation. Maybe there's a radical mosque, maybe there's a peer group who as fellow travellers. Does that square with your experience?
Yes, absolutely. This is a bit of a myth about the completely radicalised person. It does happen occasionally, but a lot of the so-called lone wolves are actually part of a network or extremist cells, etc. And often some of their family and friends support this and know all about this. On the other side of that, we've had terrorist plots disrupted by mosques, by mosque leaders, by family members, mums and dads have actually called the police and said, my son or daughter wants to join ISIS, wants to go to Syria, wants to do something terrible. Please stop them and prevent another program that have been brought in. So that is both an opportunity and a threat, the fact that people are not isolated. They are part of wider networks. If they are completely isolated, it's very difficult to stop them. But we need everybody. There's far-right terrorists around, there's Muslim extremist terrorists around, and the people closest to them, family and friends, are often the ones who know most and are actually the best chance we have of stopping this kind of thing. So I would urge everybody watching to get involved.
Dr. Hassan, we have to leave it there. Appreciate your time today. Thanks very much indeed. Dr. Haersma joining us from the Quilliam Foundation. More from here very shortly. For now, though, let's just take you back to Gillian. Gillian.
Colin, thank you. The other story today, the funeral of Northern Ireland's former Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness, is taking place now in Derry. Among those attending is former US President Bill Clinton. Our Ireland correspondent David Blevins is at Longtower Church in Derry for us. And I understand that there were cheers and clapping once Bill Clinton was recognised.
And even royalty.
Yes, the Requiem Mass is now underway here at the Church of St Columba at Longtower, and Martin McGuinness's widow Bernie, their two daughters and two sons have been joined not only by the former US President Bill Clinton, but by Irish presidents past and present, Irish prime ministers past and present, and perhaps most notably of all, the former Northern Ireland First Minister Arlene Foster. Bill Clinton arrived alongside the former Irish Prime Minister Bertie Ahern, two men who played instrumental roles in the brokering of the historic Good Friday Agreement. So the former president had made his way from the United States to pay his respects, and there was a very touching moment inside the church when Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams introduced President Clinton to Martin McGuinness's family. But as I say, the other moment of applause was reserved for the former Northern Ireland First Minister, Arlene Foster. And I don't think we can understate the significance of her attendance here today. Important to remind people she's not just the leader of the largest unionist party in Northern Ireland and a woman who shared power with Martin McGuinness, but she herself survived an IRA bombing, and her father, a former part-time policeman, survived an IRA gun attack. So it is quite an act of reconciliation for her to have chosen to be present at this Requiem Mass today and to show her respects to Martin McGuinness.
He knew only too well how many people struggled.
Could be criticised for her presence at the funeral today.
Very aware of it. Republicans,
well, she does face the prospect of some criticism even from within her own Democratic Unionist Party, but Arlene Foster recognises that if there is to be any prospect of Northern Ireland moving forward from the difficult political situation in which it currently finds itself without a devolved government, then there has to be reaching out from both sides. And we are just now a couple of days away from the deadline for the restoration of power sharing. If they cannot reach agreement by 4 o'clock on Monday, then there will be a problem. So that's part of the reason I think she's here.
OK, David, thank you. David Blevins, our Ireland correspondent there. We shall return you to Colin Brazier, who's still at Westminster for us now.
Gillian, thanks very much indeed. Kurt Cochrane was the name just made public, the name of the third victim who was killed on Westminster Bridge yesterday. A statement from his family, a very eloquent, very moving statement, simply reads, "Our family is heartbroken to learn of the death of our brother and son-in-law, Kurt W. Cochrane, who was a victim of Wednesday's terrorist attack in London. Kurt was a good man and a loving husband to our sister and daughter, Melissa. They were in Europe to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary and were scheduled to return to the United States on Thursday. Melissa also received serious injuries in the attack and is being cared for in the hospital. We express our gratitude to the emergency and medical personnel who've cared for them and ask for your prayers on behalf of Melissa and our family. Kurt will be greatly missed, and we ask for privacy as our family mourns and as Melissa recovers from her injuries." The statement there from Kurt Cochrane's family, one of the victims of yesterday's terrorist attack. We'll bring you more from Westminster with Kay Burley, top of the next hour.